Number 10, Origins. Why not start at the beginning? Let's do it. Ultimate James Howlett first appeared in Ultimate X-Men issue 1 back in 2001. Now his combat days began as a paratrooper for the Canadian Army during World War II. He was part of the invasion of Sicily, and funny enough, that's actually where he met Private Nick Fury and Private Fisk. Now Fisk got hit by a bullet, and then the three of them were all taken away. They were captured, even though James was from a different unit. He was from Canada. He just got roped into it. So that's where they all got put into the Weapon X complex and were under experimentation by Dr. Abraham Cornelius. Now luckily James got out of there. The other two though, they were tested on to become this new Captain America. They were the test subjects of the new Serum. But if you want to hear more of that Ultimate side, check out one of our playlists. We explain quite a bit of it. So yeah, in the Ultimates, Nick Fury is a super soldier. How cool is that? But Wolverine got out of there. He didn't want to be part of it. Well, he kind of got out of there. He got really close until a stray bullet hit him last second, and then everybody was in shock as he healed himself. So they dragged him right back in and they're like, well, we got to do some tests. What's going on here? So we got this mutant ability down the road, whereas main Wolverine was just born a mutant. So key difference right there. Number 9, Mutant Zero. So Dr. Cornelius was super into this guy, and then during these experiments, because obviously they wanted to pick him apart and see what the hell just happened, during these experiments they discovered this gene that when it's activated gives you superpowers, basically. So he came up with the term for them. He called them mutants, which is a great word, gotta admit. And James Howlett was mutant number 1. Well, actually, Mutant Zero was his term. Now the genome was spread around the planet over time, causing a few more mutants to pop around, just a few of them. And also those scientists who like to experiment on James and others, they got what was coming eventually, because the mutant boy down the road had some Weapon X scientists as parents, and when he found out how they were treating James and others, well, he took out both of his parents and set James free. Yeah, that little boy was Magneto. The Ultimates are sick. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be really helpful for us. Or if you're feeling good today, maybe you want to hit that subscribe button. I mean, no pressure, but it's right there. Thank you so much. Let's get right back to the video. Number 8, Weapon X. So yeah, that whole thing with Eric was a big deal, but Wolverine was actually recaptured later on, this time by Colonel John Wraith, who was not fond of mutants at this point. There were a few of them and he was like, okay, this has gotten out of hand. And at this point, John was also the new head of the Weapon X program. So they wiped Wolverine's memory and gave him the name Logan. And this is where things got real for James, more real than before. This is when he was tortured. The other guy who was there, who was also getting tortured, his name was Victor Creed. And Victor was getting on his nerves the whole time. And this was when the adamantium was bonded to Logan's skeleton. So a lot of things happened during this time as well at Weapon X. So he was a mindless brute, and things took a turn one mission when he was deployed in the desert during the Gulf War. The truck got ambushed and Wolverine was let loose. This insane, mindless mutant weapon. No big deal at all. So he wiped out everybody. He took out every single member except for one guy, Nick Fury. He didn't take him out. He saved his life and carried him all the way to base because part of him still remembered meeting him early on in his life. Nick Fury actually recognized him as well and then came back later to set him free. What goes around comes around. Number 7. Brotherhood of Mutant Supremacy. So Magneto of course becomes an evil ruler in this universe as well, and he and Charles once shared a dream about creating a safe haven for mutants called the Savage Land. But a few arguments later and a pole in the spine, and now Charles is in a wheelchair, they're not talking anymore. So now Magneto is full-on villain and he creates this Brotherhood of Mutant Supremacy, and his first idea was to recruit Wolverine and attack the Pentagon. And that Savage Land ends up becoming the new evil headquarters, not a paradise. So Magneto wanted to take out Charles for good this time, not just paralyze him. He wanted him gone, so he sent Wolverine to get the job done. So Wolverine was undercover the entire time. Quicksilver actually almost blew it at one point, but Wolverine came through and impressed the X-Men. Number 6, joining the X-Men. So while he was in deep cover, Wolverine sparked up a romance with Jean Grey. Now he wanted to seal the deal, really make it look believable, so he went on with this fake romance. Thing is, Wolverine actually fell in love with her. Oops. Now Scott, aka Cyclops, was a little upset during this, and Magneto actually wanted Scott to be with Wanda. But Scott had other ideas. But Scott was actually undercover as well, so he was on the bad team and then Wolverine was on the good team. It was basically The Departed, but you know, superheroes instead. The Jean and Wolverine affair gave Scott a reason to go and talk shop with Magneto. So he went in and then found out this plan, which was to wipe out Washington with Sentinels, and then the X-Men intervened and saved the president, who was naked at this time, just, you know, because sure. And this is when Wolverine fully becomes an X-Men. He attacks Magneto, with Quicksilver even removing Magneto's helmet to make it easier for him. So everybody came around and joined the good team, which is great. And then a page later, Wolverine is now in his new, much cozier home. And their first mission as a new X-Men team with Wolverine was to head back to Weapon X as a team to get some answers. Number 5, jealousy. Now this Wolverine gets pretty jealous as well. He takes things to a new height when he discovers that Jean Grey truly loves Cyclops. So Logan now wasn't a fan of Cyclops. There was this deep rift growing between them. So Charles was like, hey guys, why don't you both go to Savage Land together and work it out? You know, as dudes, couple dudes working it out. You can talk, throw rocks, whatever. They did not work it out. They got into a huge fight. And what happened really was Wolverine let Cyclops fall to his death in order to get Jean back. Cyclops survived because, you know, of course he did. And he exposed Wolverine to the crew, but Cyclops didn't blast him with his visions. No, he just blasted him with words. So he let Wolverine stay on the team, and this whole time Wolverine just sat and felt guilt. He was like, damn, maybe I am not a good friend after all. Interesting. He started to become a leader and he let his past self die. He became a role model for the younger X-Men like Rogue. And then he ended up becoming pretty good friends with Cyclops, even though, you know, he threw him off a cliff and all. Number 4, Sabertooth. So yeah, maybe you're wondering what ended up happening with that other insane guy, Victor. Well, when the team first went back to Weapon X, they came across Wraith and Sabertooth. Now, Sabertooth did one of the worst things ever at this point. He burned the files on Wolverine, literally just destroying his past right in front of him. And this leads them to their first violent conflict. They go back and forth, throwing each other into trees, and Sabertooth thinks that he's got him at one point. He's got him underwater, so he's holding Wolverine's head underwater, and he's questioning how exactly a healing factor will fix a suffocated brain, which is a great question. He's like, oh yeah, you hear that popping in your nose? That's your brain cells exploding. Now, it's cool, except Wolverine's underwater this whole time. He probably didn't hear any of this monologue, but it's still cool. But Wolverine's got that healing factor, which is probably stronger than we think. Number 3, healing factor. Ultimate Wolverine has been known to have a weaker healing factor than our 616 Wolverine, but it's kind of his main thing. I mean, Ultimate Wolverine can regenerate his body tissue so well that at one point, believe it or not, Wolverine was stuck under an iceberg, and the only way he survived was to bank on that healing factor, and he ate himself. The dude ate his arms, like he ate his body. It's like 127 hours, only, you know, he's fine. He just has to eat good. He ate strips of his own arm because he had to. I mean, he can grow it back, so it's not too horrible. No, that's still pretty horrible, actually, now that I think of it. Superheroes are wild because this opens up the meat dimension theory, which is just a blast. If you haven't heard of it, I strongly recommend you Google it after this. All this regeneration, where does the meat come from? Where does it go? Can he eat forever? What's going on? Question for you guys, if you could regenerate your cells and you were stuck, would you do it? Would you eat yourself? Let us know in the comments. That's a weird thing. Let us know in the comments though. I'm still curious. Number 2, adaptable. In Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk, it was said that Wolverine's power might be the survival ability. It's like his main thing. Because at one point his head gets clean off his body. It's just taken off, but he's still alive. And Nick Fury makes a good point here. He's like, well, if it was a healing factor, he would still be dead right about now because it's just his head. It still doesn't make any sense. But Ultimate Wolverine's head was alive and well. Now, without his lungs, he should not be able to breathe, but he adapted and started breathing through his skin. So he's adaptable in the most ultimate way. Number 1, combat. So the way he's able to fight off Sabertooth after being held underwater is just by going right in between the legs. He fights dirty, claws are out, he's doing what he has to be done. Wolverine says, hey, at least I have enough brain cells left to cover my family jewels in a fight. And I gotta tell you, that's a great call. Also, that's a great sentence to say right before you toss somebody off a cliff. This guy loves tossing people off cliffs, eh? Wow. So the ultimate combat is a bit more dirty, a little more rough than his 616 counterpart, I'd say. But that's because he kind of has to be, because his healing factor isn't as strong as a 616, and even his adamantium skeleton is not that helpful. Adamantium is weaker in the Ultimate Universe, fun fact. But even so, one time Magneto ripped his skeleton out of his skin and Wolverine had to regrow his entire body back. That's the most painful thing I can imagine. I still don't want that to happen, healing or not. I would fight dirty even if my bones were made of adamantium and even if my skin still came back out of nowhere. Because pain is still pain, and I don't want any of that pain. No, siree.
Number 10, Perma Gray. Or, well, mostly. Hulk would appear to be green a few times in the comics, but for the most part, he was always gray here. Apparently, he was green a few times for some reason that was I mean, it was never really deeply delved into. It only happened once or twice in the universe, but it would later be established that gray was supposed to be the Hulk's coloring. I feel like they made him gray to denote a sort of shift in this Hulk's mentality and persona from 616's, and also to make him even more different in appearance than his 616 counterpart, as 616 Hulk is more often than not green, though he has also been gray from time to time. Super Soldier Serum. Bruce Banner was one of the scientists tasked with attempting to recreate the Super Soldier formula. Worried the credit would be kept from him, but also believing he had actually managed to recreate the serum, he decided to test it on himself. The result was that he was transformed into the beast that we come to know as the Hulk. So he didn't quite nail it, but he did manage to create a serum that would make a person unstoppably strong. However, because of the fact that he was now part man, part monster, he would end up being apprehended and even arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. Although at least he wasn't fully part monster yet. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about the Ultimate Universe, be sure to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Hulk Serum. Ultimate Hulk would also require the Hulk Serum to even be able to transform. In fact, this at one point is used as an offhand explanation for why he has been occasionally green in appearance in the comics. It apparently had something to do with those batches of serum that Bruce Banner was using to transform, and that's like what made him green. I don't know, I guess he put some green dye in there or something. And in order for Banner to become Hulk at all, he would need the serum, which of course sometimes turned him green, but mostly still turned him gray. He would need the serum for the transformation, that is, until he mixed together the Hulk serum with the Super Soldier Serum, which S.H.I.E.L.D. now had after uncovering Steve Rogers and extracting it from his blood. Consuming a version of those two serums blended together meant that Bruce Banner's DNA was permanently altered, meaning that he would no longer need the serum to Hulk out in the future, which was maybe not great for him. Number 7, Times Square Massacre. Bruce Banner combining the serums together would not only alter his DNA, but result in a massacre that he would be held responsible for. The Ultimates had been getting bad press lately, and Bruce saw an opportunity to help the team out as a fellow ally and scientific, though not field-oriented team member. Only S.H.I.E.L.D. knew his secret that he was both Bruce Banner and the monster known as the Hulk, so he decided to unleash the Hulk on the world to give the Ultimates a villain that they could beat. However, this ended up being a not great plan. Bruce was also jealous of Freddie Prinze Jr. at the time, who was currently out on a date with his then ex, Betty Ross, and also in his Hulk form ended up unleashing that frustration. So enacting his plan here resulted in the death of hundreds of people. Later, when his secret was leaked and the world found out who the Hulk, or should I say who Bruce really was, S.H.I.E.L.D. had no choice but to put him on trial for his crimes. He was actually found guilty and sentenced to death, which they intended to follow through with by dropping a nuclear bomb on Banner. Transforming into the Hulk, however, would prevent Banner from dying there, and both he and Hulk would thereby survive that death sentence. Number 6, Assassination Attempts. While their attempt at killing Bruce Banner failed initially, it wouldn't be the last time that S.H.I.E.L.D. would try to take out the Hulk. Later on, Nick Fury would send Wolverine to hunt down Hulk. Fortunately, Wolverine would end up deciding against killing the Hulk, but it wouldn't matter anyways, as S.H.I.E.L.D. found a new way to control the Beast, finding something more useful to hold over his head so they could have better control over him, thereby no longer needing to kill him. Number 5, Ultimates. Banner would continue to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., but would also kind of become their hostage in a way. He would eventually end up joining the Ultimates, but was also used as a weapon by S.H.I.E.L.D., who would often unleash the Hulk on their enemies. All while this was going on, Banner attempted to get better control over the monster within him, but would also attempt and succeed in escaping from S.H.I.E.L.D. on a few occasions. At one point, they held Betty Ross, whom he loved, hostage in an attempt to control him. That's what I was talking about in the last point. Hulk was never really a willing member of the Ultimates, to be clear, but instead was made to be an ally of theirs against his will, whereas Bruce Banner was like an ally of the Ultimates initially because he was a scientist, until he had this whole Hulk thing going on. And like I said, not only was Hulk used as an unwilling ally of the Ultimates, but S.H.I.E.L.D. would also use him as a direct weapon, putting him in a pod and shooting him out like a missile in the direction of their enemies. Number 4, Adamantium. Adamantium is Hulk's weakness, except when it's not. Adamantium is one of the few materials strong and sharp enough to break Ultimate Hulk's skin, but it doesn't always succeed in hurting him. The Hulk, like in 616, can become stronger the more angry he gets, so we have seen instances in the Ultimate Universe where he was simply too mad to actually be able to get harmed with adamantium. At one point they try to puncture his skin with an adamantium needle, but Hulk's skin is so tough at that time because of how furious he is that he just breaks it. Number 3, killed Spider-Man's parents? Spider-Man's parents were killed by the Hulk? No, not really. But it was definitely made to seem that way in Ultimate Origins. In issue number 4, we see Bruce as the Hulk losing control and destroying his lab. This is implied to be his first transformation and taste of that loss of control. Richard Parker also happened to be working in the lab that day. His wife Mary came to pick him up with their infant son Peter in tow. I guess she couldn't get a sitter or something like that. Richard, in fact, is in the lab when it explodes and comes crashing down around him, and we see Mary get struck by a steel beam as it flies out from the explosion. It seems to be heavily implied that the two of them die here, although that completely contradicts everything that has already been established about their deaths and about Peter's childhood, which we know from Ultimate Spider-Man. And I think, oddly enough, I think this issue is Bendis, and I believe all of that is also Bendis, so I don't know what's happening here. It's like Bendis contradicting himself. Now, for this whole event to have actually happened with the Parkers, it's more likely that they were just very badly wounded in this explosion, despite the fact that it looks like they are both quite dead here. It's actually little Peter who manages to reverse the transformation, helping Hulk to calm down and turn back into Bruce here, only for him to get beaten down by Nick Fury, who is evidently none too pleased with his lead scientist. He's like, what did you do? Don't do that. Now we're going to basically hold you as our prisoner. Number 2, Dark Ultimates. While Hulk has also worked alongside the Ultimates in the past, he also has no real allegiance to the team, especially considering he was often made to join the fray against his will. So it wasn't surprising that when the Maker, aka Ultimate Reed Richards, offered the Hulk a place on his more sinister Dark Ultimates team, that the Hulk readily accepted that. Reed was hoping that the team would help him to win in a final standoff against the Ultimates. Little did any of them know that there was an even greater threat looming that was even bigger than either side could have imagined. A threat that would successfully wipe out their entire universe of Earth 1610. At least temporarily. Number 1, First Hulk. Bruce Banner might be acknowledged as the Hulk even in the Ultimate Universe, but on Earth 1610, he was not the first person to become the Hulk. The first Hulk in the Ultimate Universe was actually Tyrone Cash, aka Leonard Williams. Williams was a professor and scientist who had actually been a mentor to Bruce Banner. He had his own motives for working to create the serum that would turn him into the Hulk, and actually took it before Banner did. Cash would use his brilliant mind to avoid capture for years, and would also operate as a criminal during that time. But eventually he would be apprehended and would end up joining the Ultimate Avengers team, which in this reality is a team more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad than the Avengers of Earth 616. You can check out Tyrone Cash in Ultimate Avengers 2, which is the name of a series, not like issue 2. Just to be clear, there's a lot of numbers in Ultimates.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Vampire King. If there's one thing we need, it's more Vampire Hulk. I mean, right? That's what you were just thinking of. Also, scariest thing you can imagine, easily. He made his first debut in Ultimate Comics Avengers issue 3, and at first he was actually Nerd Hulk, which we see in the MCU right now. God, I hope he doesn't turn into a vampire. Or maybe I do, I don't know. Now, he was a clone of the Hulk that Captain America could take down, so he was smart, but he couldn't win a physical fight. So the Avengers kind of kicked him out. They're like, great, you're smart, but you can't punch, so beat it, pal. Rude. But that's when the next version of Nerd Hulk came to be. He was bitten by a vampire and took over an entire vampire horde. Now, the solution to a vampire Hulk was easier than we might have thought. Just teleport him into sunlight. And that's exactly what happened in Ultimate Avengers 18. We definitely need this guy to come back, especially now, post-COVID. He'd make a mark. Number 9, the Magician. A magician, the Magician. Who is he? The first Ultimate X-Men character that doesn't actually have a counterpart. So the Magician is OG in the Ultimates. Meet Elliot Boggs. He made his grand entrance in Ultimate X-Men issue 66, created by Robert Kirkman and Tom Rainey. Now, he was always dedicated to protect humanity, which is a great thing in a superhero. We want that. But when his powers came to be, the police thought that Elliot was the cause of his parents' death. Rightfully so. I mean, this guy can warp reality, but he can't even control it. So You don't really want to be around him, but you kind of want to be around him. He was able to create people, which is a pretty amazing ability. Dangerous, but amazing. So he worked with the X-Men for a bit, and then he worked with the Academy of Tomorrow for a bit, and then Nick Fury secretly talked to Xavier in hopes to get the Magician into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. Now the team attacked Elliot after some drama. They thought it was a threat, so he just created more villains. He just created more instances of Multiple Man, Blob, and Toad from the Brotherhood to attack. And Wolverine finished the kid off with his claws to the chestal plate, and it turns out that was just a manifestation, and Elliot was actually still alive. He just needs to disappear to work on his power. Fair. Where are you now? Is it good? Come back. I don't know. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It's really helpful for our channel. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your constant support. Let's get right back into this list. Number 8, a teen mutant. This next one is a one-off. He doesn't have a name, so we're just going to refer to him as Teen Mutant for now. He doesn't last too long. Now at first, he looks like a regular kid. There's posters on his wall. He's got Wolverine on his wall, which is cool. He reminds me of me a little bit, you know. And the caption says, be different. So he took that advice maybe a little bit too far. So he wakes up, he's ready for school, he's looking for breakfast, and his mother is just nowhere to be seen. Only a pile of her clothes remains on the ground. So he calls the cops. Just kidding, he didn't do that. He just went to school after leaving a note. Don't do this, kids. Don't do that at all. On the way there, he sees a collar on the ground, again by itself, just clothing laid on the sidewalk. What's going on? Now finally, he sees people, so he's not going crazy, which is a relief, but I bet he wishes that he was crazy, because he had this neat ability where people just don't survive being close to him. He hears it from the guy in the poster, Wolverine himself, when he finds him ducking out in a cave. So what happened was, when he hit puberty, this teen, he developed a specific mutation that radiates a series of toxins and acid-like poisons, which wipes out any organic tissue and just turns it into vapor, turns it into mist. The number of the day that he ended up taking out just because he hit puberty was 265. And I thought pimples were bad. Number 7, Silver Searcher. So the name is a little different for Norrin Radd in the Ultimates. He made his first debut in Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 42. He was teleported to Earth after Reed Richards mistook him for a star that he wanted to harness. So he brought him here. Awesome. Wasn't his fault. So naturally the world was also in chaos because of his arrival. But Norrin said that he would summon his master who would make the population of Earth happier than they've ever been. Fresh water for all, free phone plans, taxing the rich. What is this plan, sir? The Searcher's master was Zenla's ruler at the time. Revka Termaloon Edifax Skyros III. Rolls off the tongue nice and easy. Cool. Also known as the king without enemies. Let's just go with that. So this king would use mind control. That's the trick here, to get mind control and get these humans to worship them. So after Psycho Man took over the Earth, Silver Searcher rescued Mr. Fantastic and asked him to save the planet. Now the Searcher helped the Fantastic Four afterwards and then continued wandering the depths of space. Now we'd love to see a betrayal, especially when it's for the good side, you know? Norrin is great, and in the Ultimates, he is immortal, and he's powerful enough to go against the Phoenix, so yeah, we need more of him. Number 6, Loki. Making his first appearance in the Ultimates 2 issue 1, Loki Odinson was much more powerful here. He has the ability to shuffle time and space, as Thor simply puts it. In the beginning, Loki would fight alongside Thor and Balder. They were the Warriors 3. Now his mother was a prisoner of Odin and asked him to bring her the Norn stones, but while he was stealing them, he took out his brother Balder and of course was banished to Asgard afterwards. Now Loki can literally warp reality in the Ultimates. He can retcon history into anything he wanted to. He could create these events that just never happened, until he was depowered by Odin, of course. Now even after he was depowered, he was still able to put up quite a fight as our normal Loki. Now I want to see more Warriors 3 with them. Like, I would watch a show with just those 3 any day. It's probably gonna come, realistically, at this rate that Marvel's going at. Number 5, Iron Man. Making his first appearance in Ultimate Marvel Team Up issue 4, Ultimate Iron Man has some medical issues as well, but it's much more bizarre this time around. It's not his heart that makes him unique, it's actually his brain. Now he was born a genius, of course, and he was also one of 2 twin boys, the other being Gregory Stark. Now Tony originally wanted to start his own business with his current girlfriend Josie Gardner, but after so much pressure from his father, he decided to join the family business, and Josie ended up leaving Tony because of this. She was like, oh, I thought we had a thing. ring? Okay, see ya. Then 6 months later, Josie tragically passed away in a plane crash. Now the plane crash was orchestrated by Mandarin International, which was a company that used to work with Howard Stark earlier, but cut ties. Drama. So Howard wanted Tony to put all that pain into work for the company, but Tony was like, you know what, I think nanotechnology is where I'm going to put that energy. So after his father's passing, Tony then had to fully take over the company, but by then he was a troubled celebrity, he was an alcoholic, and things got even harder for Tony when he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. So he mixed his biotech with armor and he bought himself some time. Now Ultimate Tony Stark's tumor was actually an Infinity Stone growing in his brain, so with the nanotech body and everything, it just made him stronger, so much stronger. So this gave Tony the ability to transfer his consciousness between other machines. He's actually friends with his brain tumor in this world. His name is actually Anthony. It's a little boy. It's like a separate living hallucination boy. Totally normal. Number 4, Colossus. Making his first appearance in the 1610 universe with Ultimate X-Men issue 1, Peter Rasputin aka Colossus was discovered during the Cold War. He was attacked by Anatol Spichkin, but when it was confirmed that Peter was indeed a mutant, a deal was made instead. Anatol would keep his secret and he was so ready to give Peter a job, but down the road, if he ever needed one, he had a job for him down the road. Of course, he was a giant guy made of metal. He's like, hey, I got some for you to do, trust me. Roofing, stapling, some hammering, we can find you some things. Peter's father, like most fathers in these comics, was not a pleasant man, so Peter thought, you know what, I could use some of that help now, let's go. And then he went back to Anatol because the thing is, Ultimate Colossus had thick skin, literally he was made of steel, but he wasn't strong enough where it really made a huge difference. I mean, sure, drywall is easier to punch through, but it was heavy. Like imagine wearing a skin suit of metal. The Tin Man probably had insane calves, but it wasn't until Anatol introduced Peter to this drug called Banshee, and that's where he got the strength behind those metal mitts. So now Colossus, on narcotics, was taking on these jobs, these super strong tourist gigs, and at the age of 19, Peter was picked up from Big Boris, a Russian mafia boss, and then he worked with him for 10 years. So he just joined the mafia for 10 years from 19 to 29. You know, the usual thing you do after you're 19. He kept his powers a secret mostly for those around him, and then one day during a botched arm deal, Peter and his team were shot at. Peter survived because of his thick skin, and his mutant ability was also exposed in a much greater way. He was kind of screwed until Jean Grey found him and then offered him a spot with the X-Men. That's actually where he got the codename Colossus. Now this version is unreal. He's close with Wolverine as they both share, you know, horrible backgrounds. They would walk the streets at night just trying to solve these dark cases, looking for trouble. Imagine these two bumping into you. No chance. In Ultimate War, he took on Thor and Iron Man at the same time for 10 minutes. So, how wild is that? Number 3, Ultimate Red Skull. Making his debut in the Ultimate Comics Avengers 1 back in 2009, Ultimate Red Skull is, I know, a villain, but he wasn't always that way. He's a lot different than the Red Skull that we know from our main continuity. He's actually the son of Steve Rogers in this universe and Gail Richards. They even hid him and trained him to become the next Captain America. The Ultimates are wild. This is the dream scenario. But he always feared that he would never live up to his father's expectations. Now, it's not like he was raised in a bad household, it was kind of the opposite. He was raised to become a superhero. He was raised to fill some rather big boots. He was raised to become the next Captain America after he was declared dead in Iceland. So he kind of had the dream job and he was more powerful than Steve Rogers as well. So what happened? So when we're talking about comebacks, I really think Ultimate Red Skull could have been a treat. Now he was eventually in charge of the military that he grew up with. He figured out now that he was a leader and he used it against them. His personality as well was pretty easygoing, so it wasn't hard to convince anybody what he was doing. But again, he had this mental wall where he could never live up to Father Rogers. So at age 17, he escaped and took out every doctor and soldier on that team. He just wiped everybody out, so evil. And then he used a kitchen knife to really complete the whole Red Skull look. A nice do-it-yourself makeover. Nice and haunting. So he had all the tools to be great, but that pressure of Steve Rogers took him down the wrong path. Interesting. Number 2, Magneto. He made his first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue 1. Eric Lenscher was born to 2 Canadian agents of Weapon X. Now he got his abilities and mastered magnetism at a young age, and his father didn't respond well to that. He was intoxicated most of the time, and he attacked Eric one day, not an ideal living situation for a child. Now he tried to shoot Eric once, but those powers naturally came out, and then Eric pushed the bullet right back. So Eric had to spend his teen years with that guilt weighing down on him. Now eventually he was disgusted with Weapon X, the whole idea of finding a cure for the mutant gene through means of So he used these abilities, freed Mutant X, Wolverine, who I talked about in part 1 of this list, which you for sure watched. And then Eric married a human woman named Isabel, but he left her once he met Charles Xavier. They didn't fall in love. He was fascinated. This is the first adult mutant that he's ever met, and they share the same ideologies on them. So Eric grabbed these mutant kids from a previous lover and then denied ever loving a human woman. Rough. The Brotherhood relocated to the Savage Land a few years later, and then Eric started referring to the mutants as an army, which is bad news. He was changing, as were his views on this whole mutant operation. He even started going by the name Magneto, totally abandoned his human name, and then Xavier was no longer on board. I mean, this is Supervillain 101. Anybody can see a villain in the making, especially if you can read minds. That sure does help. So Magneto made a helmet that prevented that from ever happening. This helmet prevented psi intrusion into his mind, and it also looked cool. So when Charles took a few loyal followers and made a run for it, Magneto was pretty upset and broke Charles' spine, leaving him in the wheelchair. And finally, number 1, we have Miles Morales. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fallout issue 4, just a couple months before the death of Peter Parker. Now Norman Osborn was arrested and revealed as the Green Goblin, and then a young thief broke into that empty Osborn industry, and then that's where a genetically enhanced spider found its way into the thief's backpack. Now while Miles Morales was visiting his Uncle Aaron, that spider just happened to crawl out of Uncle Aaron's bag, and then it bit Miles Morales. He of course got these amazing abilities, the Spider-Man abilities, but on top of that he could also turn invisible, which is a pretty sweet gig. That plus Stun Blast makes Miles pretty hard to take down. Now the thing is, what makes him unique is at first Miles didn't really want to be a hero. He wanted to leave that up to the real Spider-Man until his untimely departure, saving his family from Osborn. So Miles got to the scene, but it was too late and too ahead of him. So he felt guilt after this for not being able to save Peter, so he suited up and joined the battle. His first villain was against Kangaroo, and he took him on wearing a Spider-Man Halloween costume, which is a great look. I honestly love Miles. I'm so happy he's in a bigger part of the Spider-Verse that we're currently in, and I'm betting that we meet live-action Miles Morales in the next Spider-Man movie. I think that's the only thing they've managed to keep a secret about that film. I'm calling it now. Number 10, Hawkeye. Ultimate Hawkeye first appeared in Ultimate issue 7, and he doesn't mind going for the kill this time around. He was a SHIELD agent who wasn't as fancy when it came to arrows. He's just more military this time around. It's actually pretty dark at times. He became a super soldier once briefly when the Avengers were put on the USS Jimmy Carter. They got captured, and then Hawkeye and a few others ingested super soldier serum, and then they rescued Nick Fury. Hawkeye is a pretty sweet agent. He's badass, he gets it done, but his family life and dynamic with Black Widow this time around is much different than most would think. When a team of mercenaries broke into Clint's house early on, they took out his wife and kids, which is awful. But it gets even worse when you find out that Black Widow was the leader of said mercenary team. And then Hawkeye gets even in a pretty gruesome way. 3 arrows, perfectly placed. Gory. Pretty gory, very gory. Number 9, Nick Fury. When he entered the Ultimate and Marvel Team Up issue 5, Nick Fury would soon take over as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And his first plan was to bring back the Super Soldier program, which actually resulted in the creation of Ultimate Captain America and Ultimate Hulk, etc. His origins are pretty unique. I mean, he fought for the US in World War II, and tragically he was taken by force to be the next test subject for Project Rebirth. When he was injected with this new serum, it gave him super strength, and in turn, he freed himself and other prisoners and busted out of there. So now he's got quite the power behind those punches, and Ultimate Nick Fury is way cooler than our 616 Nick Fury because he was designed to look like Samuel L. Jackson, so it's really no contest. And before we continue on with this list of Ultimate heroes, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help our channel out a lot. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's go right back into this list. Thank you so much. Number 8, Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner made his Ultimate debut in Ultimate X-Men issue 7. Now his origins here had him growing up in the Weapon X program, and he was trained to become an assassin from the start. He had a pretty dark upbringing, and in turn he would have these bad pockets with the X-Men. Like Warren and Dazzler were a couple, but Kurt also liked Dazzler, so he kidnapped her? Okay. And the team was like, hey, so we're gonna put you in a coma now because that's not cool. We can't really do that. And then he came back and he apologized. The dust was settled, no hard feelings. Okay, sure. He joined Colossus' X-Men team with Dazzler and Angel, by the way, so it was definitely fine. Kurt wasn't all bad. He was actually kind of funny, I mean, as a character, because sometimes he would use the Danger Room with Angel to reenact Pirates of the Caribbean instead of, you know, fighting bad guys. So already this version is my kind of guy. I mean, minus the kidnapping part, of course. Him and Angel were tight because they couldn't hide their mutations, so they ended up being best of friends. So they fought pirates together, chased the same girls, they're living the mutant dream in a way. Not bad. Sadly, Kurt was killed by Magneto's ultimatum wave, and it got a lot of other X-Men killed as well. So it's dark, it's nice, and then it's dark. That's the Ultimates. Number 7, the Hulk. First appearing in Ultimate Marvel Team Up issue 2, he's still big, he's still angry, but this time around he is gray. Okay. Now before this, however, Bruce Banner wanted to be just like Captain America, back before he was the Hulk, back before he was big and strong. So at Cambridge University, he was committed to duplicating the super soldier serum with helps of Nick Fury's super soldier blood. So he used it on himself, and honestly, already I'm a fan of Bruce Banner more. I mean, the Hulk hasn't even been created yet, and then Nick Fury, the first super soldier, gathered the best genetic engineers to recreate the serum, and Bruce was luckily amongst them. So Bruce actually thought that he figured this thing out, but again, he wanted to be like Cap and he wanted to stay quiet, so he tested this new serum out on himself, and then he ended up becoming Ultimate Hulk. Later on, Bruce decided to make even more serum, so he mixed super soldier serum again with this new Hulk serum, smashed them together, injected himself, so now super soldier Nick Fury actually made Banner the Hulk in this timeline. That's a cool sentence right there. Number 6, Deadpool. Meet Wade Wilson. He had a pretty rough go in the Ultimates, as do most of them. I'd say more intense than his 616 counterpart, because in Ultimate Spider-Man, Wilson gets hired by the Ganosian government, but of course in Deadpool's spirit, he gets hired to double down and hunt these mutants, but it's also a TV event. It's fun. And then when Deadpool is going up against Spider-Man, he actually gets unmasked. And his appearance is even more shocking in this reality. Even the host has to apologize to the viewers at home because his mask, I mean, to begin with, wasn't even really a mask. It's translucent, so not really the best. And then Spider-Man even adds insult to injury, saying that his face smells like a KFC dumpster on a hot day. So if anybody needs redemption, it's definitely Wade Wilson from the Ultimates. Number 5, Juggernaut. The first time we see him, it's very clear that he's more powerful. Something is up with this X-Men. He looked like a future version of the Juggernaut. It was pretty intimidating. Now he looks like an evil stripper from the future, which is, honestly, I like it. It's cool. He was a genius in this universe as well. I mean, literally, the guy was super smart. He grew up in the same trailer park as Rogue, and he still considered himself trailer trash, although he was one of the smartest people alive. Guys, never doubt yourself. Things took a turn when he was taken by Weapon X and forced to be this living weapon of mass destruction. Then following the orders of Colonel John Wraith, he was part of their strike force that took out the X-Men, or even worse, forced the X-Men into Weapon X, which we heard plenty of early on in this list. He walked tall and mighty until he got taken out in the dumbest way possible. Like the Juggernaut, this makes me upset. He for sure needs a redemption, that's all I'm saying. Even when he's fighting Rogue later on, he still wants them to be happy and in love. He still wants that dream, so he's still a good guy deep down. And then Ultimate X-Men issue 99, in the middle of a fight, he gets taken down because of a poisonous dart. A dart. Yeah, just one of those. That's it. The Juggernaut got taken out by a dart. It went right through his visor gap. I mean, amazing aim, but come on. This is the same guy that dropped a building on Gambit? Number 4, Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards needs a redemption on screen before anything else. I mean, the last Fantastic Four movie, I mean, if you haven't watched it, honestly, don't. Marvel's redoing them soon. You might as well just wait it out. In the Ultimate version, it was dark, and he was younger, and honestly, he was cooler. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 1, and even at the start of Ultimatum, when that big wave hit, Sue bites the bullet, and he didn't waste any time. He's not happy. He immediately blames Namor, and by blaming, I mean he knocks him out first and then asks questions later. Okay, Reed, chill. Eventually, he becomes a villain in this universe, referring to himself as the Maker, and caused some trouble in the 616 universe as well, after his universe was destroyed. Now, this is the Mr. Fantastic that we need. This guy gets the job done. He's scary. Number 3, Wolverine. Making his first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue 1, he didn't remember his past, and he thinks that he was once married. He has a ring, and he thinks Sabertooth killed his family. It's all a blur. Stressful. No thanks to Weapon X. Now, Ultimate James Howlett is actually the first mutant, and it turns out that this time around, you can kill Wolverine. You just have to rip his bones out that happen to have adamantium built into it. That ought to do it. Also, so painful. This all takes place during the Fatal Attractions event, and Wolverine doesn't even have a chance to scream. The adamantium that bonded to his bones erupted outward like water bursting through a dam. There's a nice picture for you. And he's still breathing when this happens. I mean, if this isn't one of the worst things to go through, I don't know what is. Number 2, Thor. Making his first entry in the Ultimates with issue 4, Thor Odinson actually looks a lot like our current MCU Thor, and I think he might have more in common than we think. For starters, the Ultimate Thor needs a magic belt to have powers, and in Spider-Man Homecoming, Happy mentions Thor's magic belt and all the stuff that they're packing up on moving day. So Thor just might need this come Love and Thunder, but in the comics, Loki was convincing everybody that Thor is just an insane dude with a magic belt. And they kind of bought it. What happens was he wasn't worthy yet, so he got his ass kicked, and then finally in Ultimates 2, issue 12, he gets his powers back. But the fact that this Thor went through all that to begin with, so sad. Definitely so sad. Number 1, Quicksilver. Okay, yeah, he's in love with his sister in the Ultimates, and it's weird, and it's gross. Yeah, sure. But this Quicksilver otherwise was far more superior. He was faster in the Ultimate Universe, he was supersonic when it comes to speeds. He almost reached the speed of light at one point, like, come on, dude. And as long as he's still alive, he can always re-heal himself. In Ultimate Wolverine issue 3, Pietro grabs Logan and runs with him. He was actually trying to tear the flesh off him, and if it was anybody else but Wolverine, it probably would have worked. And in Ultimate Comics 29, he heals himself using his super fast metabolism, and he uses his super speed to study Reed Richards' notes. He says he's not smart, but he is fast, so he ran the math nearly 100,000 times. That's insane. Quicksilver needs a comeback for sure, more so on screen than I think any superhero right now. Hashtag Ralph Boner.